Hello, good morning. It's Monday morning, no makeup Monday. This is a great day to be alive. It's another opportunity to find out more about myself and my behaviors. So I wanted to share this book. I know it's backwards, or maybe it's not backwards, but it looks backwards to me. But if you can't read it, it's Beyond Codependency by Melody Beattie, and Getting Better All the Time. So I'm on page 66, and I wanted to read a little bit of this book because it's helping me so much. I got into a codependent mode, and I mean, it happens a lot and frequently, at least. And these codependent moments are very hard to identify if you don't know what they look like. So this book actually shows you how to identify the codependent modes and cycles that we get in our heads. And so instead of saying relapse, she likes to call it a recycling. So we're recycling behaviors. And so I wanted to just read a couple pages if y'all want to stay with me just for a few minutes, because it's so helpful in, retrieving self-compassion for ourselves, and because it's the only way that we can be a helpful person in life. And if we want to make a change, a positive change in the world, this is probably the best first step, is to identify our own issues and also our own things about ourselves that are great. So this is chapter 7, and I'm just going to start reading it, and maybe I'll put in some of my reflections and how I relate to it. So, getting through the cycle. Recycling can mean a momentary lapse into our old behaviors. Or recycling can lead to more serious problems: depression, use of mood-altering chemicals to cope, or physical illness. Codependency is progressive. Recycling can be too. We can get stuck, spin our wheels, then discover we've gotten ourselves more deeply entrenched in the muck. And that happens. And sometimes I had in the past, been just so confused. I've been like, why do I feel this way? Why am I feeling so terrible? Why am I going back, and not realizing that it's codependency before I started getting into this recovery. So whether our recycling experience lasts 6 minutes or 6 months, our instinctive reaction is usually one of denial, shame, and self-neglect. And also, I used to get really defensive. If someone pointed something out to me, I couldn't just take it as a learning experience, especially even if it was someone that was close to me. I would get kind of upset and defensive. So we get out of or through a recycling process. And also, FYI, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but recycling is kind of the same word as relapse. Okay, we get out of or through a recycling process by practicing acceptance, self-compassion, and self-care. These attitudes and behaviors may not come as effortlessly as denial, shame, and neglect. But we can learn to practice healthier alternatives even when it feels awkward. Some suggestions for doing that follow. So she talks about the healthier alternatives, identifying when we're in the recycling situation is really good, because sometimes we can just get engulfed in it, and it's like a spiral. I call it kind of like spiraling. So our emotions shut down. We may go numb and begin freezing or ignoring feelings. We return to the mindset that feelings are unnecessary, inappropriate, unjustified, or unimportant. And that's totally me. Like, am I crazy for thinking this? Am I, just total self-pity, pity party, and just like, blaming myself. We may tell ourselves the same things about wants and needs. So not feeling worthy enough to have what we need, like, that's crazy. Like, we are worth it. Compulsive behaviors return. So we may begin compulsively eating, caretaking, controlling, working, staying busy, spending money, engaging in sexual behaviors, or anything else we compulsively do to avoid feeling. So that the controlling part is something that I've noticed that I do, if something is making me uncomfortable, so that I need to control it so that I can feel better. And it's the same thing as using drugs, like I used chemicals to avoid feeling. Victim self-image returns. So we may start feeling, thinking, talking, and acting like a victim again. We may begin focusing on others. That is a really big one too, focusing on other people or resorting to blaming and scapegoating. A good clue is I'm in it. That I'm in it is when I hear myself whining about how someone is doing this or that to me, or how awful something is. So like, that is totally relatable. Our self-worth drops, our self-esteem, self-hatred, shame, we get stuck in that. Overly critical of ourselves or other people, self-neglect, neglecting the small and large acts of self-care that are a regular part of our routine. That's just really, really important to have that routine of self-care, like even as little as just brushing my teeth. The crazies return. So all the old crud can come back. This includes return of anxiety and fear, feeling disconnected from people and our higher power, problems sleeping, too much or too little, mind racing, feeling overwhelmed by confusion or just overwhelmed, difficulty thinking clearly, feeling angry and resentful, feeling guilty because we feel that way. That's a big one for me. Feeling desperate, depressed, deprived, undeserving, and unloved. We may get into the overs: overtired, overworked, overcommitted, overextended, overly sensitive, or the unders: underpaid, underappreciated, underspent, underfurred, and under the weather. And she goes on to talk about continual physical conditions. So all this stuff is so good to know about how our behaviors are linked to the way we deal with things in our life and how we handle things. And I like to, go back to when I'm focusing on other people and other people's problems. That's a sign that I'm being codependent. The behaviors return too. Once we're in a recycling situation, the coping behaviors may return. Feeling trapped, progress to the danger zone during recycling, chronic physical illness, chemical dependency, chronic depression, possible fantasies about unliving. After we identify the return of our old ways, the next step is simple. We say, oops, I'm doing it again. This is called acceptance and honesty. So being honest about when I'm doing these things. I mean, I can't, sometimes it's difficult to identify it myself. And that's why I surround myself with people that are loving and caring, or that are also in recovery, who are also recovering from process addictions, codependency, and chemical dependency issues, drug and alcohol use disorders. Because the people that are recovering with me can honestly tell me things that I'm doing that I can't see. And instead of getting defensive about it, which sometimes I still do, honestly, like, it's human. It's getting, less and less that I get defensive, but I still do sometimes. It's natural. But then realizing that, like, oh, okay, I'm getting defensive about this, and someone's just trying to tell me that, they see the codependency, or that I'm trying to self-will. And self-willing is that thing where you just try to do your own recovery program and you don't reach out, you withdraw from people. It's kind of like a vicious cycle. And then she goes on to say and talk about recycling myths. And this was so good for me to hear last night, because I feel like, it's so easy to get caught up in this and then not know what's going on. So, you sometimes if we're not doing the codependency or recovery work, it's so easy to not recognize this. And so we were just left confused about what's going on in our brain. So believing any of the following myths about recycling may make recovery more difficult than it necessary. So I should be further along than I am. If I've been recovering from a number of years, I shouldn't be having these problems. Basically, this is all, if I'm a professional in the recovery and mental health or general helping field, I shouldn't be having this problem. If my recovery was real, so this is like self-doubt, overthinking our recovery program. And this has led for me to want to leave my recovery program. And they're just myths, and they're not real. These are all just thoughts in our head. That's been my experience anyway. And then the last thing I'll go over is like the taking care of ourselves list and recycling tips. After we've accepted ourselves and given ourselves a hug, we ask ourselves 2 questions. What do I need to do to take care of myself? And what am I supposed to learn? Often the self-care concepts we need to practice are basics: acceptance, surrender, which surrender is not give up. It's just letting go of control, for me anyway. Realistic evaluation of what we can control. Well, that's like the same thing, right? Detachment, which that word has been really difficult for me to identify the meaning of lately. So I've been working with someone on that word, detachment. Removing the victim, dealing with the feelings, taking what we want and need seriously, setting boundaries, making choices and taking responsibility for them, setting goals, getting honest, letting go and giving ourselves huge doses of love and nurturing. So like, I feel like this is, giving ourselves huge doses of love and nurturing. That is probably the best part about all of this, is that I can make mistakes and I can be in my relapse, or as she likes to call it, recycling habits, and also just have, compassion for myself and awareness and acceptance that I'm in that. It doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me, someone that's not trustworthy. 'Cause I can get into that mode too, where I'm like, well, when after recognizing that in myself, I can get into that space where I'm like, well, I'm just not a trustworthy person. Everyone's going to think that I'm, trying to manipulate them. And so that's how that cycle goes. The recycling is just self-defeating thoughts, and just it spirals, and it leads to other things like depression and just not being able to function. it essentially it leads to just not being able to function. So I hope this helps anyone who is going through some codependency issues like me. And I just say keep going. I'm starting to focus more on myself today. I'm going to do things for myself and make some lists of goals and things that I want to do. I'm going to work for a couple hours and just relax and have a good day, and know that I'm working towards this this life that I've chosen, this path that I've chosen. And yeah, so I hope this helps. And again, this is Beyond Codependency by Melody Beattie. And you know, being in recovery can save relationships, it can save lives, and it's just good for everyone. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you're all having a great day. And just remember, Monday is a new day for a new chance to a new fresh start for the week. Okay, bye.